NDTV 24/7. In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news, is here.
I've been reporting on all issues, big and small, from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, rest of South India, bringing you all the action, all that you need to know, all that you want to know.
The energy of Maximum City is infectious. I bring in that energy in our news coverage from financial capital Mumbai.
India's IT capital is always buzz. It's literally a city that never sleeps. And I keep you ahead on all the Bengaluru buzz.
Covering from the southernmost part of India over the last 23 years, I bring in-depth and 360-degree coverage from the Dravidian heartland.
The land of Mishti is also known for its bitter politics. I have seen much water flow under the Howrah Bridge, covering Bengal in all its vivid colors.
I now request the Honorable Prime Minister to launch NDTV World and address the summit.
It was the grand launch of NDTV World by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. NDTV World, as he
You are watching the World 24/7 on the NDTV network. I'm Parmeshwar Bava. Let's begin with the headlines we're tracking this morning. The Kremlin issued a stark warning to the United States, accusing it of throwing oil on the fire by permitting Ukraine to use long-range American missiles to target Russian territory. The Biden administration's move adds an uncertain new factor 1,000 days into the war. A massive China-Russia natural gas pipeline was completed, Chinese state media reported, suggesting that Russian gas could begin powering Shanghai by the end of the year. US President-elect Donald Trump has indicated he would deploy the military to carry out mass deportations, the backbone of his policy promises. Trump's plan will face legal challenges, but this time he has friendlier arbiters, some analysts argue. Nearly 100 aid trucks were violently looted in Gaza over the weekend, the United Nations has reported, underscoring the challenges of delivering desperately needed food and supplies to the war-torn strip. The convoy was forced to take an alternate route after the Israeli military instructed it to leave a day earlier than planned, according to a UN. Prime Minister Modi held a meeting with United Kingdom Prime Minister Keir Starmer on the sidelines of the G20 Summit in Brazil. Joe Biden headed for a photo with fellow G20 leaders in Rio at his final summit as US President, only to find that they had already taken the picture without him. Frustrated US officials blamed logistical issues for this blunder, which meant that Biden missed out on this shot. Well, the Kremlin has accused Joe Biden's outgoing US administration of wanting to escalate the war in Ukraine by allowing Kyiv to actually use long-range missiles for strikes inside Russia, vowing an appropriate and palpable response. In fact, the decision, first reported on Sunday to allow Ukraine to conduct strikes with US-made weapons deep into sovereign Russian territory, has not been formally announced by the White House, but a German government spokesperson said on Monday that Berlin had been informed. Putin had said Moscow would take the appropriate decisions based on the threats that we will face, and previously also suggested that Moscow could supply long-range weapons to other countries with the aim of attacking Western targets. And in news from Ukraine, A Russian missile strike on the port city of Odessa has killed at least 10 people and injured 44 others, including 4 children. Local authorities say 3 of the injured are in serious condition, but the attack targeted a residential area, damaging an apartment building, a university and an administrative building. Mr. Zelensky has condemned the strike, saying it was a deliberate attack aimed at showing Russia's true intentions. In fact, the Ukrainian president has accused Russia of spreading false claims about halting attacks, emphasizing that their real goal is war.
This attack was carried out with a missile. The video that has emerged after the attack shows devastation and vehicles on fire. According to the local governor, 10 people have died in this attack and more than 40 people have been injured, out of which 3 are in critical condition. 4 children are also among the injured. After this attack, Ukrainian President Zelensky has said that Russia is deliberately targeting residential areas. In this attack, a multi-story building as well as an university building and an administrative building have also suffered heavy damage. Zelensky has also said that the only way to stop such attacks by Russia is to destroy Russia's power to attack. For this, he has appealed to his ally countries to come together. Odessa is the 3rd most populous city of Ukraine. Ukraine has an important port here, and there is a large-scale import and export happening from here, which has been disrupted due to Russian attacks. A part of the port here has also been destroyed. Since the beginning of the war, Russia has been trying to capture this city. Russia is continuously attacking this city from the Black Sea side. After the attacks on Saturday and Sunday, there is a huge shortage of water and electricity in Odessa. People are mostly forced to live in bunkers. It is believed that Ukraine is preparing to give a big befitting reply to Russia's attacks, especially when it has got permission from America that it can use long-range missile against Russia. Due to this, there is a fear of the war escalating in near future, and this is being also said that Ukraine is going to reply in a big manner soon.
Meanwhile, oil prices climbed more than $2 a barrel on Monday after news that crude production at Norway's Johan Sverdrup oil field had been halted, which added to earlier gains stemming from the escalation of the Russia-Ukraine war. In fact, Norway's Equinor has halted production at the Johan Sverdrup oil field, which is the largest in Western Europe, following an onshore power outage, which is what the company had announced. So the news has sent oil prices higher, adding to earlier gains sparked by rising tensions in the Russia-Ukraine war. Meanwhile, a massive China-Russia natural gas pipeline was completed, Chinese state media has reported, suggesting that Russian gas could begin powering Shanghai by the end of the year. Moscow is now largely reliant on the Chinese market for its gas exports after Europe blocked imports over the Ukraine invasion, but efforts to build a separate pipeline stalled earlier this year over price disagreements. China is already getting discounted Russian natural gas and supplies through the completed pipeline. It will continue at a significant discount, according to an expert, but the war in Ukraine has deepened Moscow's economic dependence on Beijing, and Russia is showing signs of becoming a subordinate economic partner to China rather than an equal, as per many political watchers. Let's turn our attention to the other big story we're tracking. Well, prosecutors have said 2 men put financial profit over human life when they attempted to smuggle a couple from India and their 2 young children across the United States-Canada border in heavy snow and bone-chilling winds, leading to the family freezing to death. Prosecutors allege Indian national Harsh Kumar Raman Lal Patel, who's a 29-year-old, ran part of a sprawling human smuggling scheme and recruited Steve Shand, who's a 50-year-old, to shuttle migrants across the border. Both men have pleaded not guilty to 4 federal counts related to human smuggling, but their trial in Minnesota is expected to last about 5 days. Michael Goldberg has more for us.
The trial began Monday with defense attorneys arguing that 7 photographs depicting the family's frozen bodies should be excluded as evidence. Defense attorneys argued that the gut-wrenching images would sway the jury unfairly. Prosecutors argued that the images were necessary to convey that the family was inadequately prepared by Battelle and Shand to face the frigid conditions in Minnesota. A federal judge ultimately allowed the evidence to remain admitted.
Let's get you a quick update from Gaza now, where nearly 100 aid trucks were violently looted over the weekend, the United Nations has said, underscoring the challenges of delivering desperately needed food and supplies to the war-torn strip. The convoy was forced to take an alternate route after the Israeli military instructed it leave a day earlier than planned. This is what a UN agency has said. In fact, the main agency that actually supplies aid for Palestinians that Israel banned last month. Israel has been letting in significantly less food and supplies into Gaza in recent weeks compared with previous months, the UN has confirmed. But the deteriorating conditions has prompted Pope Francis to call for an investigation into allegations of a genocide in Gaza, which is actually Pope Francis's strongest criticism yet of Israel's war with Hamas. And 76 Palestinians have been killed because of Israeli military strikes across Gaza in the past 24 hours. The health ministry has said. Some survivors have said that victims were ripped apart into fragments. This as hospitals are under siege and malnutrition cases are rising. Meanwhile, lawyers for a Palestinian rights group have told a London court that the UK is allowing parts for F-35 fighter jets to be exported to Israel, despite saying they could be used in breach of international humanitarian law in Gaza. And Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has confirmed that last month's airstrike on Iran targeted a specific component of Tehran's nuclear program, as well as its defense and missile production capabilities. In fact, speaking in Israel's parliament, Netanyahu did not elaborate on which part of the nuclear program was actually struck. The Israel Prime Minister did confirm while briefing the parliament that in fact nuclear capabilities of Iran had been impacted. This as a latest string of developments have occurred with Israeli military airstrikes striking over 70 people in the Gaza Strip. Over 100 concern as far as food and supplies are concerned, to the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. Mohammed Ghazali has been tracking each detail for us very closely. He joins us live at the moment. Ghazali, take us through the latest string of developments.
So this is the first time that the Israeli Prime Minister has, or the Israeli government on record has confirmed that how they have hit the Iran's nuclear program in the last month's attack, when Israel retaliated to Iran's attack into Israel's territory. Now, this is very significant considering the fact that there has been, there will be a new president in office, the President-elect Mr. Trump in the United States, and we know that how there is a growing bonhomie, or there is a very good relations between Mr. Netanyahu and Mr. Trump, and that is something which is very concerning for the Middle East, considering the fact that how Mr. Netanyahu is coming out and have hit multiple targets in Tehran. And meanwhile, there are reports which are coming out in the Israeli media that how Mr. Netanyahu told a group of ministers that how he was threatened by the Mr. Biden and the Secretary of State Antony Blinken for not going into Rafah, and yet he went there despite all the threats of sanctions and threats from the previous U.S. administration or the current U.S. administration. And this is considering the fact that how Mr. Donald Trump had said that he will stop all the wars in the Middle East, and yet Israel has continued its strike into Lebanon and into Gaza. Yes. It appears now that Mr. Netanyahu has been more emboldened, and these attacks will still continue till Mr. Trump gets into the office.
As always, Ghazali, thanks so much for taking us through the latest developments. With that, let's get you a latest update from the G20 Summit. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has opened the G20 Summit in Brazil by unveiling a global alliance aimed at tackling poverty and hunger. The initiative was signed by 81 countries, including 18 of the 19 G20 countries, as well as the European Union and the African Union. But the only G20 country not to sign on was Argentina, which is currently led by far-right President Javier Milei. Let's get you the latest from Rio. Celia Mendoza has the latest update.
The first session of the two-day G20 Summit in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, concluded with the official launch of the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty, an initiative led by Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. The alliance, which includes Argentina, has 148 founding members comprising 82 countries, the African Union, the European Union, 24 international organizations, 9 international financial institutions, and 31 philanthropic and non-governmental organizations. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi praised the initiative, saying it is a commendable effort by the Brazilian G20 presidency. During his speech here at the fight against hunger and poverty, he said that it is important the work India is doing, the efforts to alleviate poverty, aiming to lift 250 million people out of that situation. He also mentioned that his country provides free food to 800 million people, contributing to the fight against hunger. Other topics discussed on Monday included the need for global government institutions reform. The Prime Minister had a friendly encounter today with President Joe Biden and a bilateral meeting with the leader of Indonesia, another one with Portugal and Italy. The G20 leaders are expected to reconvene on Tuesday to discuss sustainable development, energy transition, and potentially get a declaration from the group. The United States has pushed to get the war against Ukraine within the document. The closing ceremony will formalize Brazil's handover of the G20 presidency to South Africa. Celia Mendoza, Voice of America, reporting from Rio for NDTV.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Modi held a bilateral meeting with United Kingdom Prime Minister Keir Starmer on the sidelines of that G20 summit in Brazil. He had a discussion with the heads of state from Brazil, Singapore and Spain, underlining India's commitment to boost international collaboration. Our Prime Minister also met with the French President, and we're told they discussed artificial intelligence as well as advances in the space sector. As always, news and updates continue in a moment right after this very short break. Don't go anywhere.
Download any single ID partner app, link your card and earn reward with top brand.
Get it free with single ID.
The last elections of 2024. It's the battle for India's economic heart. An election that will decide Maharashtra's future.
Can the big brother BJP manage the competing ambitions of Mahayuti? Can the Red Book rally the voters once again for Congress and its allies? So as Maharashtra's future trajectory takes shape, we report from the ground.
Two visions, two ideology, one verdict. An election where no caste chemistry can yield a perfect formula.
It's a state that is splintered with power battles. The big question, will Maharashtra poll outcome unify parties or divide them further? And who will emerge as Maharashtra's undisputed leader?
NDTV proudly upholds its legacy of trust and credibility. According to the prestigious Reuters Institute's Digital News Report 2024, NDTV is the top-most news platform in the country. Number one in both online and offline reach in India. Beating all its competition, NDTV stands for trust.
Hello and welcome to India Sense, where I speak with global opinion makers.
The United States has made a strategic decision over the last 20 years to move closer to India.
So a $7 trillion economy seems a perfectly conceivable number.
If you want to be a national party, it's that you sort of accept the way the world is rather than want to endlessly hark back to how it was.
Modi is promoting the digitization of the economy, which is accelerating growth in the country.
I want to thank the American people for the extraordinary honor of being elected your 47th president.
Donald triumphs. What does Trump's win mean for America, for the world, for the wars, and for India-US relations? Non-stop coverage on NDTV. Top analysts and voices from the ground. Extensive coverage.
Well, US President-elect Donald J. Trump indicated he plans to declare a national emergency and use the US military to assist with his proposed mass deportations of undocumented immigrants. Trump's confirmation came via a repost on his social media platform Truth Social in response to a post by Tom Fitton, the head of the conservative group Judicial Watch. Fitton had suggested earlier this month that the Trump administration would declare a national emergency and deploy military assets to tackle illegal immigration through a mass deportation program. Trump responded early this morning by reposting Fitton's comment with a simple affirmation in classic Trump style, saying the word true with 3 exclamation points. Natasha Israni has been tracking the details for us. She joins us live from New York at the moment. Natasha, what should we make of Trump's confirmation regarding the use of military assets to support this mass deportation pledge?
Well, I think one thing that we have to start on being very clear with is that it's a confirmation of intent. They're prepared to use. What he's saying is they're prepared to use military assets, but this is not policy yet. It cannot be policy till he actually is sworn in inauguration in January. So what really happens on the ground still remains to be seen. But what we can expect is sweeping executive measures that whatever is under Donald Trump's control to take part, to do this mass deportation, he is going to go ahead with that. But there are questions because while this remains his top campaign pledge, how it actually works out on paper, he's likely to face both legal challenges as well as questions from humanitarian rights who are going to object to these mass deportations and how they take place. And the other question is also financially of the money that's involved in such an exercise, expected to be the tune of billions of dollars. So while this is a clear indication from his end that he will use all resources under his power, this is not policy yet, and there's still unanswered questions how the National Guard can actually be deployed.
As always, Natasha, thank you so much for joining us with the latest update. As my colleague Natasha is reporting, it's a confirmation of intent, but it is not policy yet. But come January, we will have more clarity. Thanks so much for joining us with a live update from New York. Meanwhile, the Competition Commission of India has imposed a penalty of 213 crore rupees on social media major Meta for unfair business ways with respect to WhatsApp privacy policy updates that were done in 2021. Besides, the competition watchdog has also directed Meta to cease and desist from anti-competitive practices. In other news, a proposed law that would redefine New Zealand's founding treaty between the British Crown and the Maori chiefs has triggered political turmoil and a march by thousands of people the length of the country to Parliament to protest. The bill is never expected to become law, but it has become a flashpoint on race relations and a critical moment in the fraught 180-year-old conversation about how New Zealand should honour its promises to indigenous people when the country was colonised and what those promises actually are. Switching tracks, the recent establishment of a historic sea link between Dhaka and Islamabad, it marks a significant step in enhancing bilateral relations between Bangladesh and Pakistan, the first such connection since the independence of Bangladesh in 1971. This development is poised to have substantial implications for regional dynamics, particularly concerning India. And now turning our attention to the underpinnings for a new, more inclusive accord for our oceans. Here's a glimpse into the Great Oceans Dialogue, which aims to serve as a platform for critical conversations around the blue economy, maritime logistics, critical minerals, and diversified supply chains.
जैसे आप लोगों को मालूम है कि हमारे परम आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी और ग्रीस के प्रधानमंत्री दोनों के बीच में जो भी चर्चा हुई, जो भी एजेंडा सेट हुई, इसी एजेंडा को हम आगे बढ़ाने के लिए फिर से हम लोगों ने चर्चा में आज दोनों की तरफ से हमारी बातों को रखा गया है। और जैसे आप लोगों को मालूम है, शिपिंग सेक्टर में, शिप ओनरशिप में दे आर द लीडर्स इन द वर्ल्ड, ग्रीस। सो इस सिलसिले में हम चाहते हैं कि उनकी भी कंपनी इंडिया में ऑपरेट करे और इंडिया शिप बिल्डिंग के सिलसिले में प्रमुख भूमिका ले। और हमारे इस विषय पर IMEC कॉरिडोर पर भी चर्चा हुई।
After the excellent meetings between our ministers, my Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis and also Prime Minister Mr. Monti, we found some practical initiatives, and we decided to be together in this very turbulent geopolitical situation in the world, but at the same time to see how we can cooperate in the shipping sector, in the maritime affairs, and in other many fields which is in our common interest. So I'm very glad because I had this excellent meeting with the minister.
इसकी खासियत ये है कि ये एक बार पोर्ट बनने के बाद आज का JNPA पोर्ट हो, मुंद्रा पोर्ट हो और ये पोर्ट मिलके अगले 25 से 30 साल में वेस्टर्न पश्चिमी क्षेत्र में हमें नए पोर्ट की जरूरत महसूस नहीं होने देंगे। तो विकसित भारत के सपने तक ये पोर्ट हमें ले जाएगा। पहली बात तो सबसे पहली चुनौती ये थी कि इसका इन्वायरमेंटल क्लियरेंस मिल जाए, तो वो चुनौती हमने पार कर ली है। इसीलिए उसके बाद ही माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने 30 अगस्त को इसका शिलान्यास किया। अब आगे की चुनौती है कि इसको समय पे पूरा किया जाए। जो हमारा जो शेड्यूल है, हम उस शेड्यूल से पहले चल रहे हैं। तो हमारे शेड्यूल के मुताबिक इसको 29-30 में पहला जहाज आना है। अगर सब चीजें ठीक रही तो शायद हम एक साल पहले ही पहला जहाज लाएंगे।
Thank you for investing your time and watching this edition of The World 24/7. As always, we'll keep tracking the latest for you. Do stay tuned.
We reached an agreement on patrolling. We have gone back to where the situation was in 2020, and we can say with that the disengagement process with China, you can say, has been completed. The understanding, to my knowledge, is that we will be able to do the patrolling which we were doing in 2020.
This week on India Ascends.
All eyes on upcoming Rio G20. India poised to mend emerging economies, G7 divisions. Trump 2.0. Is it time up, Trudeau? Ottawa stares at fresh turmoil. Chinese security personnel in Pakistan. Is it Beijing's bid to colonize Islamabad? And in Bangladesh, why does Attorney General want secular removed from the constitution?
All this and more only on India Sense with me, Gauri Dwivedi, at these timings on the NDTV network.
NDTV proudly presents NDTV World Summit 2024, the India Century. I now request the Honorable Prime Minister to launch NDTV World and address the summit.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi's inaugural session at the NDTV Summit outlined his vision for the India Century, driven by aspirational India.
हमारा प्रयास होगा